What's going on, everybody? It's your boy M.I.C back in the building with yet another YouTube video. Today we are going to be expanding on our Explain series. In today's topic, we're going to be explaining the crush system. Now, I'm sure you've probably heard the term crush system, but we're going to go in today and talk about it a little bit more in depth about how it works, and when it doesn't work. And first, we're going to jump into what exactly is the crush system. Well, the working definition we're going to be using is that the crush system, it is comprised of moves that put a character in a state where they are completely invulnerable to attacks within a particular hit property range for a limited time. Now, that could be a high move or a low move. Typically, you don't have mid crushing. Maybe there are some special cases for that. But in those cases, it works exactly the same. You have a move that for a certain amount of frames, it will be invincible or invulnerable to being hit by either a high move if it is a high crush or a low move if it is a low crush. Mid move if it is a mid crush, a true crush. But sometimes there's just evasion, which we'll talk about in another video. So what is its use? Well, most often, moves with crush properties are used to avoid attacks that are outranging or possibly even faster than the move being used. They're also good for counter hitting and punishing, which we're going to talk about in a different video about how exactly specifically they work as two different things. Another use for moves with crush properties is that their ability to steal turns when at disadvantage, which we covered in a previous video. You can check that video out right up there in the link in the corner. We can see that it has a lot of different purposes and uses. But we need to first understand, how does it work? Well, first and foremost, each move has a frame window to which the crush mechanic is applied. So not every crush move is going to be the same. Some moves crush at later frames. Some moves crush at earlier frames. This will vary from move to move. So, you won't always, just because a move is a high crush or a low crush, does not mean that it will always work in every situation the same. A good example of a move that would be a high crush would be a move like a down 4, a down 1, low jab. Some characters have big moves that are high crushing. And you have to know the frames for all of these things crushing startup, which would be different from the frames of the move startup. Now, there's nothing that's going to be able to tell you that, so I'm going to show you how you can check for it as we go on in this video. Also, when we look at like low crushes, those are moves that typically jump over low moves or low jabs. Special mids sometimes can be low crush, depending on the property of the special mid. Like a low jab is considered a special mid, although it is considered low crushable, whereas some special mids are not low crushable. They are considered mids by design, but they don't hit you while you crouch. So you have to know the special properties of each kind of mid. I know it can be a little confusing, and we'll probably have a discussion about that on another explained video. But for here, we're just going to be dealing with the crushing properties, right? So moves that we know that crush, you have low jabs, standard down fours. We know hop kicks and jumping moves tend to crush all of the low attacks that come in. So what about this makes it so strong, and how do you stop it? Well, here's the problem with these crush moves. They have invincibility, but for a limited window, right? We talked about this earlier. So what kind of situation would we be using these in? All right, so how do we use this in a real scenario? Well, in game, we already learned in our previous video about counter hitting and counter attacking that once you do a jab into a jab, that it's impossible to beat that without somehow getting around the jab, right? So if we do a jab into a jab, we know if we try to interrupt with our jab, we will get counter hit, right? And because we'll get counter hit, we have to then do something that will duck up underneath this high move. This is where our crush system comes into play. We have our low jab that will beat it, our low kick that beats it, and even our high risk big launcher that beats it because it is a high crush, right? But what else do we know? We also know that the jab gives frame advantage, and since it gives frame advantage, a jab into a low jab is going to be able to interrupt almost all of those options. Actually, we'll be able to interrupt all of those options. So let's take a look at it. We'll go for our jab. It's going to beat it. We go for our low jab. It beats us because it has frames. Our low kick, it beats it because it has frame advantage. And our big launcher, it beats it because it has frame advantage. Now, in this scenario, you might say to yourself, well, Mike, I'll just stand and block those because that's not doing anything to me. But then we have to consider that a jab into a crouching low kick, standard low kick, 12 frame low, is going to beat out almost all of our options except for the crouch jab. All right, so let's try that. All right, so we're going to try the jab into the crouching low. We go for a jab, we get beat. We go for our big launcher, we get beat. The only thing that we can beat this out with, we try to go for our low kick, we get beat as well. All right, so the only thing we can beat this out with is a low jab. But is there something else we could possibly do to punish these options a little bit worse? Because we know if we try to do a low jab, it could possibly be beaten out by their low jab. So what is our next course of action? Well, we then have the option to use crushing. This is where crushing comes into play. So I do a jab and I do my jumping move, right? My hop kick. And you notice that even though we were at the frame disadvantage and we're doing a slower move, what this is actually allowing us to do is jump over the low because there's not enough frames coming, keeping us in place. And we're able to beat out the low move. Even if he goes for the low jab in this situation, because we have enough frames to jump and hop kick, we're going to be able to hop kick from right out of that, even though he has frame advantage. So this is the importance of using the crush system. Now you're probably saying to yourself, well, Mike, I mean, that's kind of messed up. Is there any way to stop the crush system? I'm glad you asked, okay? I'm glad you asked. We're about to get into that right now. So do we really have to worry about crush moves anytime that we're on the offense? Is it always going to be an issue that we're going to be dealing with? Well, not necessarily, okay? First off, if an opponent does not have enough frames to allow crushing to take effect, then that move will still be susceptible to being hit by an attack that it is supposed to be invulnerable to, all right? We're going to take a look at that, right? Now, how do we take an account of that? Well, moves that have crushing, the fastest crushing on the game is going to be at 3 frames. That is going to be your standard low kick, your standard low jab. Now watch this. We're going to be at +7 and we're going to be able to steal low jab. So let's check it out. You see, we're still able to beat that, right? Even on hit, we can go ahead and do our low jab or our low kick, right? Even if we wait till the last moment, we'll be able to do it. Now, conversely, if we do something that is +8 frames, because it needs 3 frames of activation in order to crush, it will counter hit us out of our attempt to do a high crush. So let's check it out. Notice I'm getting hit. I'm pressing down back 1, which is her low jab. I can't do anything. I try to go for the low kick. I can't do anything. Try to go for the big launcher. Can't do anything because I don't have enough frames to even crank up. So the only way I would be able to deal with this is I would have to take the chance and actually duck and then do a move. Right? That's the only way I would be able to do that. You see how his hand is already out there before I can press anything? That's how fast I would have to make my decision. Right? If I try to do something like mash it out, I'm just going to get hit because I don't have enough frames for the crushing to begin. So that's something important to note and to pay attention to when you learn your character. You'll soon find out, like, oh, there are situations I can create where this opponent does not have the ability to crush me, so I don't have to worry about crushing in this particular situation. But remember, it still is frame specific, because if that character goes for a move like a jab to a slower high move, the opponent will have the frames to crush them. So that's something to keep in mind. A jab into like a magic 4 is not going to work the same way that a jab into a jab works, unless the move being used to crush has a slower frame startup window for the crushing. All right, so that's something that you'll have to do a little investigation on, but it's very easy to figure that out. You just set up your character to do a jab into another jab, or a jab into the move that you want to try to use after the jab, and then you just simply see if your character, your opponent's character, has the ability to crush it or not crush it. All right, so that's one thing. But what about jumping over moves, right? Let's look at something like this. Sorry, we're gonna do a up forward 4. I'm sorry, up forward 3 into a low jab, right? Now you're probably saying to yourself, why would you do that? Like, I'll just hop kick that jump, right? Well, believe it or not, even jumping has frames to it. In fact, you need at least 3 frames. I'm sorry, you need at least 9 available frames to be able to even jump off the ground. In some cases, 8, right? So let's see what happens. If I try to do just a jump by itself, on block, this is -2, right? So I need 9 frames to jump. But you notice I'm holding up forward. I'm unable to jump. Now I'm going to try to hop kick. You notice if I try to do any attack, I try to do a hop kick, it's just punching me out of it. This is because I am -2 and I need 9 frames to come up off the ground. So while this doesn't look like it should work as a frame trap, this frame trap is keeping my opponent from being able to do a crush move to me in that situation. So this is very, very useful and vital information to know. Learning your frames, always a very vital thing to know, a very vital tool to have in your arsenal, because having that knowledge, you now understand how to limit your opponent from doing the things that you want them or don't want them to be able to do. Now, this opponent can still do other methods because the game does have a lot of different techniques, but now you're limiting what they can do, which is making your mental stack, what you have to actually focus on or worry about, that much less, right? So with that being the case, we're going to bring this video to a close, and next we're going to probably talk about the differences between crushing and evasion. Also upcoming, we're going to probably be talking about how you use the counter hit or punish properties of a crush move in our crush system part 2. And we're going to also talk about the states being changed from a move, how to put your opponent in different states, whether that be crouching or standing, and how that affects things like the crush system. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button, because I know you love what you're hearing here. Also, drop some comments in the comment section if you have some requests or some questions about what's going on with the crush system and want to know a little bit further about how it works. Also, make sure you check out TTU over at TKN House ENT.com/TTU. There we teach courses. It's an 8-week course, make you go from good to great in 8 weeks. And also, don't forget to hit that sub and the notification bell so you'll be right here when we drop more explained or other TKN House content. With that being said, that brings this video to a close. You already know what it is. It's your boy M.I. in the realm of the real, where only the real can chill. Peace.